Hello everyone, my name is Holly and welcome back, or welcome if you are new. Today's video is a really exciting one as I'm always happy to be talking about fantasy, but specifically today I'll be recommending some amazing fantasy heavily focused on dragons. Or maybe the book has some really heavy lore on history about dragons, somewhere that carries the story. There couldn't be a better time to make this list because there are so many great sounding dragon books coming out this year and being announced, and I'll be talking about them in my monthly book releases videos. I can almost feel the epic dragon fantasy energy coming back, and hopefully it's here to stay. And not to toot my own horn, but I think I have the perfect list for you. So subscribe if you are not. I need your help getting to 20,000 subscribers. I know we can get there and I can't get there without you. So we got this. Let's end this intro and go ahead and get started. I'm gonna start with a strong one, and that is The Summer Dragon. Have you ever wanted to read a book where a man literally goes hand to hand with a dragon? Then let me just shove this book in your face. Or maybe you hate it when books bait dragons, like an author who makes it seem like dragons play a huge role by putting them all over the cover, but they're never really in the story at all. Well, no need to worry about that here, my friend, because there's practically a dragon on every page, with detailed descriptions of their growth, life, thinking, and even their leash process. Dragons here are full-fledged companions, especially when it comes to our main character, Maya, a girl who has been looking forward to having her dragon all of her young life, but with an ongoing war happening, this has changed. I'm trying to keep this as vague as possible. I like going into books practically knowing nothing. So if you're new here and you're worried about spoilers, I try to be as vague as possible, but still give you a little inkling on what's going on. Don't worry, there's even wild dragons with nests and their own language. Dragon fan service galore. Moving along to number 2, I have the Dragons of Deepwood Fin. When Bradley P. Bailew announced a new series that revolves around dragons and dragon riders, I was ecstatic. I adored the Song of Shattered Sand series and trusted that in this newest series that he's written, I would get a huge cast of characters, lots and lots of political intrigue, a unique magic system, and fantastic world building. I feel like that's what Bradley P. Bailew is known for. He is so good at that. And adding dragons and dragon riders to the mix was just chef's kiss. I mean, it was given a high rating and rave review by the one and only, the queen of fantasy herself, Robin Hobb. So you already know it's going to be epic. From the first page to the last, you are dropped into a fast-paced plot filled with adventure. We mostly follow 2 characters, an inquisitor and a thief, as they are forced to work together to uncover a plot that threatens their lives. I especially enjoyed the aspect of religious intrigue, which I typically don't really care for, but the way it's written into the story, the corruption of it, and conspiracies, and I found this aspect really interesting and refreshing. Plus dragons, and that's all you need to say to summon me. The Bone Ships. You can't get more dragon fantasy than this. It's the first book to a trilogy, so bingeable because it is finished, and it's set in a world where underwater dragons have been long thought extinct, making their bones very valuable as they are used to make their ships to fight their wars. And we follow a man sentenced to death serving on a bone ship along with other convicts, and it's commandeered by a woman on a mission to find a rumored dragon. The world the author created here is absolutely freaking fantastic. It's one of those worlds that might take you a little bit to grasp, maybe 100 pages or so, but once you settle in, it is wonderful. There are bouts of action and a variety of different creatures we encounter that aren't just dragons. A very addicting read, and I highly recommend picking up this trilogy. The Black Coast. This is a really refreshing fantasy, and what it has going for it are not only its war dragons or land dragons. I actually pictured them like little raptors, but more dragon-like, but it's very fleshed out characters that it heavily focuses on. Speaking of a little raptor, I have a friend. Hi. This is Udon, everyone. Say hi. Look at those little toe beans. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, the really fleshed out characters that it really heavily focuses on. In the story, you follow the town of Blackkeep that know only one thing when they see a murder of crows. That means raiders are coming, but this time is different. The raiders are waving a white flag and are seeking asylum. The conversation in the story about the merging of 2 different cultures is incredibly right, and seeing the similarities and the differences, some of the cultural differences they attempt to accept with each other include language and homosexuality, women in power, food even, which was all those like food details are always interesting to me. It was just brilliant to see such representation done so well. This won't be for everyone because I'd consider it like slower paced, but if you want a read that is different but includes raptor dragons, highly recommend. Already the 5th book that I recommend is Dragon Mage. Every now and then you come across a book that from the moment you read it or even just glance at the cover, you know that it will be something special. Dragon Mage is such a book. Sorry prologue haters, but it starts off with a brilliant one that really sets up the story perfectly. We are given so much world and lore, dynamic between writers and their dragons. It's epic following Aram, who is a misfit, shunned and mistreated because he's different, but he has a power that he isn't quite aware of. It's an underdog story for sure. He faces a lot of challenges in this world of old magic, evil sorcerers, ancient evils, and of course dragons, and they're amazing. Speaking of dragons, the Rage of Dragons. This book will sit you down and spoon feed you epic fantasy like a literal child. It's an African-inspired fantasy that is non-stop action. Even every plot point and twist when they are revealed, it was always during like some training or combat sequence, so there is never a lull in the story. Our main character Tao, I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, is born as a lesser into a military-focused society with a rigid caste system. Through his training as he is groomed for literal war, we follow his journey as he uncovers more about himself and the world around him and begins to question why things are the way they are. And as most epic fantasies are, this may take you a minute to understand the world, but once you are more grounded, you won't be able to put this down. At least that's how it was for me. Complex characters and a world full of political intrigue. It is awesome. I'd actually love to reread this one myself sometime in the future. Blood of an Exile. I could have sworn I had a physical copy of this one, but I can't find it, so I'm just gonna put up the picture. My bookshelves are a mess anyways. This is as pure sword and sorcery fantasy as it gets, with an added bonus of dragons and dragon slayers. I'd actually compare this book a little bit to Kings of the Wild because of its humor and adventure quality. It's the first installment in the Dragons of Terra series that revolves around an interesting hero that was exiled and essentially sentenced to death as a dragon slayer. He somehow manages to survive 14 years out in the wild, killing countless dragons, thus making him like a living legend. But the king, who's actually the one who exiled him, calls him back for a favor in exchange for his freedom. This is a very dark story, full of dragons, mysteries, magic, and definitely death. The writing style is great and fluid, so it's very easy to read. The characters themselves are well crafted, and our main character makes for a refreshing and interesting protagonist in the genre. It's like 50-50 epic fantasy and grimdark. Plus, he has a donkey named Alfonso, and Alfonso is just great. Alright, if you have time on your hands, and then let me present to you The Priory of the Orange Tree. A very popular hyped book back in the day, still is, I'd say, especially with the release of its sequel recently, A Day of Fallen Night, which is a chonker in itself. It literally casts a shadow over my face. The plot here is centered around the threat of the Nameless One returning, which is a giant dragon that threatens to destroy the world. And if the Eastern and Western kingdoms cannot unite and work together to overthrow this threat, then life as they know it will be over. Quite dramatic. It's a queer-centered fantasy with such good characters to root for who you hope survive. There's dragons and witchcraft, political intrigue between the kingdoms, 800 pages of just pure high fantasy goodness. Alrighty, we have 2 more on this list, and the second to last one is The Dragon Lords. If you were looking for a book that, again, is kind of like Kings of the Wild, but with dragons, then this one is for you. This is a very classic fantasy. It's a bit of an older one as well, following a ragtag group of adventurers trying to steal a dragon's gold, but accidentally starts a revolution. It's very much a laugh out loud kind of fantasy and just like ridiculously over the top romp. We have a mercenary trying to be a better person but failing, and a giant lizard man who is quite happy to continue killing for money, thank you. A mage who is just trying to give up using magic for her own reasons, and a couple other really interesting characters who all have their own motive. The banter between them all is really funny. The situations they find themselves in was really ridiculous. The story is fast-paced thanks to the shorter chapters. Basically, if you want a story that will take you along for the ride, a dragon ride, and keep you entertained throughout, well then I recommend giving this one a go. And the last book on this list of mine is Ascendant, which kind of matches my background right now. The first book in a fast-paced, captivating dragon rider series. We follow Holt, who is just a pot washer who finds a deformed dragon egg and takes a huge risk defying the order by rescuing it. I mean, I would do the same. The baby dragon inside is born blind, and I feel like that made their unique bond even stronger. But we also have undead hordes rising and traveling across the land, slaughtering and causing chaos. Character development here is top notch in my opinion. It's filled with classic dragon fantasy nostalgia. This book is like a drop of water in an ocean for a new fantasy world with so much more to offer. So if you're looking for a dragon fantasy series to get lost in, get yourself a copy. But of course, that's how I feel about every one of these books. That's going to be it for this ultimate dragon fantasy book recommendation list. Hopefully you found something worthwhile, worth checking out. Tell me below what books I should have added to this list that I need to check out myself. I probably just forgot, let's be honest. You'll have to yell at me in the comments. Like this video if you found it useful, subscribe if you're not. I'd love to have you here, and until we meet again, happy reading.